Okay, so this is just going to be a really quick overview of a really fun series from the late 80s by Bantam. It's the Choose Your Own Adventure series. Here's A New Hope, here's Empire Strikes Back, and of course here's Return of the Jedi. These were written by Christopher Golden, who I've mentioned in another video. He was the author of the junior novelization of Shadows of the Empire. Highly recommended. I alluded to the fact in that video that he'd done a few other things with Star Wars. This is the primary thing. I really like these books. Now, here's the thing. Do they have anything to do with the Legends canon or continuity? Well, only in a very narrow sense. Because they're choose your own adventure style, you really get to make lots of very big, bold decisions and not decisions, right? I mean, there's things you don't have to do in these books that you'd have to if you were just reading, say, the novelization of any of the original trilogy. Because of that, there's a sense in which, well, gosh, very little of this is really anything valuable for the Legends canon or continuity, right? You're not going to be reading these to learn anything more about the existing EU. Okay. If, however, you want to compartmentalize and just have your own sort of adventure and play a little bit on the margins with the sorts of decisions you could make, or maybe some of the what ifs you've asked yourself while watching the films, well, then it's totally fun, and I highly recommend it. I mean, I recommend it in any event, but the good news is if you never found these, if you never tracked these down, don't worry, you're at least not missing out on additional glimpses into the EU itself. You're just missing out on, frankly, more fun to have with the sort of Star Wars characters. The conceit here, by the way, is that throughout the three books, you're not playing yourself as much as you're playing a friend of Luke's from Tatooine. And so as early as the New Hope edition, you're there to basically sort of either persuade Luke to stay on Tatooine or to join him and Obi-Wan on the trip to Alderaan. Later on they're in the Death Star. You get to sort of decide, do you want to save the princess or not? What's really interesting about this book is, particularly given the fact that it was presumably and primarily targeted for children, right? There are some very, very scary, fatal, final sort of decisions that, or consequences from these decisions that occur. I mean, in certain cases, like some of our heroes die. I mean, it's pretty crazy. I mean, you can just be a real curmudgeon and just say, yeah, you know what, Luke, here, let's just stay and be moisture farmers. And then everything terrible happens, right? And I think by the end of it, I think there's a way in which to sort of there's a set of decisions that ultimately leads to the Empire having 3 Death Stars at the end of the saga, and that just the Empire is just completely taken over, and so that's really neat, right? Of course, none of that is canon, and none of that is part of the continuity, but that's okay. It's a fun sort of adventure to sort of have if you can kind of compartmentalize this, right? So yeah, a lot of fun. And the thing is, unfortunately, guys, I hate to break the news to you. These are really hard to find and they're really expensive. And I mean, I just don't know how often someone is say selling a whole bundle or the whole lot in good condition for less than, I mean, probably $100. I mean, so that's the bad news. Again, the good news is, like I said, it's for something that is sort of broadly, part of, or at least published under the Legends era. It's it's not really gonna contribute to your further sort of enjoyment of the Legends canon. If anything, it's just a fun thing. It's a fun thing to sort of play with when you can eventually track these down, which again I do recommend, and I don't want to really say much more about it partially because gosh, there are so many exponential ways in which, because you get to choose your own adventure, that the story can unfold. It would be almost impossible for me to sort of walk through all of those. So again, I'm just excited for some of you guys to tell me about, have you read this? Which adventures have you gone on? What's happened at the end? Have you read it in ways that get you to the sort of the canon end? Have you read it in ways that have taken you wild directions? Let me know. And good luck tracking this down. Again, Christopher Golden, Star Wars Choose Your Own Adventures. A lot of fun, and definitely a fun part of my collection. Again, if only because they're kind of hard to find, and perhaps more than anything because there's just something about, I've said this in other videos, there's something about the 80s and 90s for Star Wars for me. It's partially because, I don't know, I guess that's just kind of an early era for me in Star Wars collecting, and it's also because there's just something about the West End games and the Bantam era, which this series is a part of. It's that familiar Bantam rooster up there. There's just something about that era that I'm just totally nostalgic for. It just felt like, partially because it was the beginning of building out the expanding universe, but it does feel so sprawling and expansive, and just so romantic in a way. And I just think there's nothing that typifies that more than just the ability to choose your own adventure, right? I mean, this is just totally adventure centric, right? And you gotta love it. You gotta love it for that alone. So anyway, that's it. The Christopher Golden Choose Your Own Adventure original trilogy. To my knowledge, and I probably should have fact checked this first, I don't think there's anything like this for the prequel trilogy, but there are more Choose Your Own Adventure style books, which I will talk about in a later video. So I'll just tease that now. Some really neat obscure things that I think were only published in the UK. So keep an eye out for that video down the road. Okay, that's it for now. Talk to you guys later.